Hey y'all, this is Allison hanging out in my space to craft, and this is a big page. All right, so it's Christy's Beautiful Life, 30 Days of Sketches, day 22, and it is by Tara Van Morse, and it's going to work really well for my photos. I have different size photos than she shows on hers, but I think I can make it work. And I do have quite a few photos for this. So I have pulled out this Creative Memories Candy Lane, I think it was called, or Candy Shop. And I have a whole bunch of papers. I think this is going to work. I do end up having to pull, I think, one more paper. I've also pulled out some ephemera. That little cupcake was a swap that I made for swap, and I made an extra for myself. I also found this cute rainbow, which I liked. A few little vellum pieces, some of which I use, some I don't. I love this camera. Just some random things that are in the color palette. Some were from Candy Shop ephemera, actually, like tags and stuff. And then I have this Vicky Bouton Sweet Life sticker pad. So I'm going to start by gutting the two papers and making the frame. And it is a frame that meets in the middle. And so you are able to, I'll show you this one. I had already done the other one and started filming, but it didn't take. So I'm just double checking. So be careful when you do this, if you're using stripes or something like that, that they meet properly and they are all going in the direction that you want. So that's what I was just checking there. And I'm saving this paper, and I do end up using some of it, so I'm glad I did. And then I just cut an inch off this paper and then a ½ inch off the other side, and that's so they can meet in the middle. So I also need to cut the corners, and it's a pretty big rounded corner on the sketch. So I'm using this Creative Memories template, and the closest in blade, and I'm just in order to get it in the right position, I just set it in there and then push the blade up to the edge, and that seems to work. And I have to do that on both sides. So I set the blade into its little crevice and then just make sure that it meets up to the edge. So I kind of have to eyeball one side of it, but it works out pretty well. And then I'm just going to assemble my two pages. And I'm using my mat to sort of make sure I line those up half an inch on each side, or on 3 sides, I should say. That just makes it a little bit easier. I don't have to completely eyeball it. So I'm happy with that. I love this bright and colorful paper pack. I don't think I have used it at all before. It also came with a whole bunch of cardstock, like embossed cardstock, but I decided not to use that on this page, though I could have. So here I'm cutting, I think I cut them at 5 inches because I knew I had some other pieces that would happen. I was hoping that this would be enough, and it's not. I end up having to go and cut another strip of it toward the end. But it's okay. I still use less than one of those pieces of paper. So here I'm trying to decide, and I'm very glad I used the bigger circle. It even wasn't quite as big as what Tara had in her sketch. And I'm going to shift this over a little bit just to try and preserve paper. I still want to make sure I have enough in case I wanted to use this paper as a frame, for example, for a layout. So I am shifting it over a bit, but not all the way to the edge. And I'm just trying to decide, do I want to cut the smallest possible using this template, which is what I do. I could have cut it a little bigger, honestly. I still get the same effect, but it could have been a little bigger. Now I'm going to use my Creative Memories border system. And if you don't have one of these, it's a pretty cool investment. You buy different cartridges so you can cut different borders. I also need a second one of these, which I don't think you see me cut. I will cut it later. And I'm cutting this at about 1.25 inches total because it's just going to tuck under to follow that sketch. I'm just double checking at every step that I'm doing the right things. And now I'm just trying to think about, what do I want for the little strip across? And I end up using, I think, the striped paper. Here I'm looking through all the other papers. I can't find what I'm looking for. And I decide I'm going to use this, the piece that I gutted out. And it's going to work splendidly. And I cut it at, I think it was 2 inches. It may have been 2.5 inches. So she had hers going off both sides of the page. I don't quite do that. All right, so my next step is to cut the other circle that the template shows at the bottom. And I decide I'm going to use that same little floral paper. And for a minute, I couldn't find my little small template. It had fallen on the floor, but I do eventually go find it. Here you go. A miracle occurs. So I didn't really cut this quite big enough, deep enough. So I used the outside of it, but it could have still been a little bit deeper. It looks a little funky while I work on this because it's a crescent shape, but it gets cut flat. And so I'm just rough placing. I'm just using a little bit of adhesive, not much, because I assume that some things are going to be moving. And they do. I decide to wait to cut it to make sure I like the positioning of everything. And she has this rounded on her sketch. I am really trying to follow the sketch pretty closely because I like it. It's a really interesting sketch. So this is where I realize I'm going to need another piece of paper because that is not long enough. So I've a couple things that I did while I stopped filming. I cut another scallop. I cut another of the polka dot, and then I used my Cricut to cut the title. And then I just roughly laid out the pictures so that I could start embellishing. So they're tacked down, and now I have to decide what all I'm going to do in the way of embellishment. So I've got that big camera, which I really like, so I'm just going to build a big cluster up there. And then the cluster at the bottom, for the bottom little arch. And I'm just auditioning pieces at the moment. And not all of these pieces make it onto the page, but a few do. I wanted to use that white stitched heart, but it just doesn't work anywhere. It doesn't have enough contrast. And I hadn't inked anything else, so I didn't want to just start inking that. So you can see I'm pretty close to the sketch. I made mine a little bit longer just because I had so many, my photos were different sizes. And she had her photos all nudged up against each other, and I spread mine out a little bit. And I think I'm going to put this on the, I don't end up keeping it on the photo. So just trying to build out some of these little embellishment clusters. She did not show a lot of embellishments on hers, but frankly, I have so much stash, I need to use up embellishments. And it just gives you more to look at on the page. I didn't worry too much about the vellum showing. And you can't really tell, so I just made sure it was on the parts of the colored vellum. So this little girl that turned 4, my daughter calls her baby. They are each other's favorite person. Reese has known her since she was an infant. It is her best friend Joseph's little sister. So, and she always has these fabulous birthday parties. And she's just a sweet, sweet little girl. So, and she's all about Reese. So Reese would not miss her birthday party for the world. So I'm using some of these Vicky Bouton. There were some little hearts that match perfectly, so I wanted to get those on there. And then I go in and look for some cute little wordy bits on there. I think there's one that says sweet friend. So I'm just adding a few little wordy bits here and there. Just double checking. I'm looking for things with the same colors as well. All right, I think that's about it for that. And I start looking at enamel dots and I decide, you know what, there's no bling on this. I go through all my enamel dots. Nothing's quite right. And I settle on, this is a pack of giant gems. just because both of these girls need bling. So, and the colors are perfect. And then the last thing that I have to do is add some string in the little tag that's by the title. All right, so that's the gems, and now I just need to figure out what I'm going to use in that tag. And I have found this pink, it's actually from Queen & Company, some pink baker's twine that I think is pretty perfect. I decided to double it up. I probably should have tied it in a bow since this is, you know, a girly birthday, but I didn't. But what I do like to do is add a little bit of glue. And then we'll do some close-ups, because that's all we need to do. I do just spread out those little, the little tails a little bit, make it look a little more natural. And that just adds another texture to the page, if you will. Now then, did you notice what I haven't done yet? If you've made it this far in the video and you notice what I forgot to do until after the video, comment below. I did fix it afterwards. I'm really happy with this. Fun page, super girly, and festive. Thanks a lot, you guys.